Welcome to Toffee TV. It is Everton ClubCall live. It's a Wednesday. We are here. I'm joined by John Blaine. John's going to be here for the first part of the show.
As long as it takes,
yeah. So if you've got any questions, obviously Everton books came out yesterday and the 121 million losses or whatever it was, 120.9 million pound losses were there for people to see. So if you want to ask John anything, you know what to do. Click the link and give us a little call and we will have a chat. You can ask John what you want and we'll take the call and see where we go from there. Yeah. Matthew Elden says, Richarlison has 3 goals in 2 games. Fingers crossed he can bang in a few goals for us for the next 11 games. Absolutely, Matty.
He's going to bring any of his teammates with him.
We could do with a couple, couldn't we? We could do with a couple. But yeah. But it's good news. I mean, it's good news that he scored goals, isn't he? 9 games without a goal for Everton since his overhead kick at Norwich. And that was like his first game back after injury, wasn't it? He hasn't been scoring. You know, Leeds, he was unlucky at it. Anthony Gordon's heel and went in. You know, and then the next one, I know he scored in the Cup but in the Premier League. And then he gets 3 goals in 2 games for Brazil. Confidence up then, coming back to Everton. And you hope that the little break, the little reset, gives him that little bit of firepower.
Playing in a dominant team helps.
Oh, it does, but you still got to put the ball in the net.
Sorry, that's not undermining him. It just shows that, you know, when fans start thinking, you know, of sell him, he doesn't score goals.
Yeah.
It's all in the environment you're playing, isn't it? And he's playing at a higher standard. You might, well, I don't know about Bolivia, but you know what I mean. But with better players and chances are coming, and he's taking them, I suppose. I never watched the game, so.
No, but scored. You know, they were good strikers' goals. You know, tap in
He
stuff.
scored a few in qualifying
the right
for
place.
them,
He's done. But they love him, don't they? And he plays. He can either play through the middle or wide. Very much.
Their GD's like 2 a game, isn't it? So.
No, they're a good. They're a good side, obviously, and they're playing in an environment where they should win games. But he is such a hard worker that.
Well, we just need to set up to create chances and take them.
It's easier said than done. I've done a little thing actually on seeing a few people, you know, saying, "Oh, we'd have kept Benitez, we'd have probably been better than what we've been under Lampard," and the people who wanted Benitez gone. So Frank Lampard had 7 Premier League games as Everton manager, got 6 points, minus 7 goal difference. Rafa Benitez's last 7 games for Everton got 4 points, minus 7 goal difference. Frank's team has scored more, conceded more than Benitez. So what you would take from that is, over that period of time, the players are still underperforming. Whether it's Rafa Benitez stood in the dugout, whether it's Frank Lampard stood in the dugout, the players are underperforming, but results are being quite consistent, isn't it?
It's complex, though, isn't it?
It is. Well, you know, Benitez had won 1 game in 14, which is why he was sacked.
That's nearly half a season, you know, and he's telling the leadership it'll be better in the second half. And then we chatted on that, whatever that video was. We did.
For business,
you know, it couldn't be worse.
No, and that
you take away the first 5 games of the season,
then we've been shocking, haven't we?
Totally shocking. You're not just relegation; you're detached to the bottom.
Yeah. I guess he may say, but that was when I had all my players the first 5 games, and we were good. We lost Dominic Calvert-Lewin, then we lost Richarlison, then we lost Yerry Mina, then we lost, and it carried on, perpetuating the core. It just carried on, and all of a sudden Everton were where they are. But you've still got professional footballers who are allegedly Premier League level, who've just losing game after game after game.
It's always the way. I mean, and we say this as fans, don't we? You know, we'll go to West Ham and we'll want them to put a performance in, yeah? And I think we've spoken about this before, and if you lose because the other team's better than you, that happens.
Yeah.
And actually, if you lose enough of those because they're better than you and you get relegated, it's because you're not good enough for this division, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But when they capitulate, you know, 15 minutes into the cup game at Palace, you'd be watching it on the telly, I was sort of at the ground, and you're thinking, oh, we've come out on the front foot, almost the way we started against City and to some degree Tottenham. So you've always got that nag that says, you know, and then, you know, Andros has his slippy moments right in front of us, And they went, oh, here we go again.
Yeah.
Oh, the world's all against us.
Yeah, and that's it. And the defeat comes.
But even at 2-0, you're thinking one goal and this all turns round.
It changes.
So perhaps we just need a little bit of luck. The scabby off the back of your arse goals or whatever it is.
Whatever it is, yeah.
Fortunately, we don't appear to need that many points, but unfortunately, it's hard to see where they're coming from.
Yeah.
So going to games.
I know, mate. Sorry, John. Finish your point. He's waving to tell me we've got a caller.
Okay, well, get the caller on instead of us waffling or me waffling.
Just talking about the game. That's right.
Yeah.
Just bring your mic slightly closer to you, John. We've got Astro.
Is that close enough now?
We've got Astro in.
Astro, hello, mate.
Call in. So if you just want to pop.
Hey.
On,
I can actually hear him as well.
Hear him.
Wow.
Can you hear me now?
Well, he's going to ask you the question, isn't he? He's not going to be.
Oh, right, okay.
It's better than me asking.
Very old-fashioned. Yeah.
There you go.
You can get Bluetooth earpiece.
Nick, are you around?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah, mate. Yeah.
We can hear you. Ask away, mate.
Yeah.
Go on, man. Do your stuff.
Oh no, I have to say, these last 2 weeks without Everton have been troublingly refreshing because I haven't had anything to kind of worry about in regards to sports, and now that they're back, you know what I mean? It's just I was sitting here thinking it's Wednesday. I got to somehow come up with some kind of way to be motivated and ready to fight on Sunday. And I have to admit, I'm struggling. I mean, listen, to be honest with you, Everton right now, they could be necrophiliacs and couldn't get laid in the morgue. I mean, they just can't score. They just can't score. I mean, and that's what worries me because, we seem to, I don't know, we seem to always find a way to roll over and let folks kick us. And I don't know, going into West Ham, we're playing the guy that used to make us tough back in the day, and he's done it with that side. And I don't know. I hate to be like this, but I'm coming in with not a lot of good answers and only questions that I don't seem to have any way to address as a supporter. And those accounts when they came out yesterday, that didn't help. And yeah, I don't know, having a bit of a moan, boys. I'm sorry. Normally I'm up ready to fight, anybody that'll step in my way, but I'm kind of wanting to go hide at the moment. So sorry about that.
No, that's how you feel. That's how you feel. I think first and foremost, it's been lovely. It's been lovely. No football, no Everton pressure. There was a bit of sun out over here. It was lovely, and everything was good with the world. Everton couldn't lose last weekend. It was great. And then obviously as you get through the week, the pressure starts to pick up again. But we scored in our last Premier League game, and we didn't concede. So that's what we've got to take into this. But you're right, we're not scoring enough goals and we're letting goals in. So when that happens, normally that ends in defeat, which is what's been happening. But, I mean, you're talking about the accounts there, Nick. I mean, John's here. So if you want to ask him anything regarding that.
Well, I mean, the only question that I have, and obviously I didn't get to listen to Live at 5 until late last night as I was kind of winding down for the night. But it just kind of seems to me that the common thread that I've seen online today is that, we claiming more losses from COVID than any other club, and with our precarious situation in having the Premier League look at everything we do and basically grade our homework for us. How that seems to me, as an outsider looking in, it just kind of makes me feel like we've opened ourselves up to even more scrutiny by the amount of losses that we're claiming due to COVID. And I don't know, I'll tell you this, I was saying in a group chat earlier, I always used to have a crutch that allowed me to cope with the challenges that I saw Everton face as a professional organization. And that crutch was we always had a team that there were characters you could get behind. Moyes, Moyes always had us up for the fight. And it seems like that identity that he built up, that Everton that I kind of fell in love with in 2010, it's eroded away over the past 5 years. And my crutch, which was the team and the players and the performances, and we won. It felt like we won more than we lost, and it always felt like everybody was pulling in the right direction. Now it just seems like nobody knows which way anybody's pulling. The team doesn't feel like a team. It feels like a collection of overpaid individuals. And even though I feel like the manager is the right person, all things considered, I've lost my crutch to connect with the football club, because the performances and the way that the team has faded and faltered under pressure has just really made it challenging to love and support this football club right now. And with the financial questions, do we open ourselves up to further scrutiny from the Premier League because of the excessive COVID losses we claimed? And by the way, I think it's all garbage, because if they're not going to do anything to the slanderous six, then they ought to not, come after us, because it's not like we tried to destroy the league. I mean, they did, but we didn't. Sorry, I'm ranting and like I do. So apologies for that.
No apology necessary.
Yeah,
John?
About the treacherous six, the fans, if you will, and ultimately the Premier League itself won that battle. Remains to be seen whether it won the war or not, because those bastards will be back again.
Yep.
I mean, Nick. Hello, by the way. I'm sure.
Hello, my friend.
It's
good to speak to you.
Sure, the view you've got's better than the one I've got, because I can see Ped from where I am. So, what a view, he says. Yeah. About the finance thing, though, I would be personally astonished. Yeah, if the last, I don't mean say a little a approval. Yeah, the last approval hurdle. Before these accounts got published was the Premier League seeing them and being happy with them, particularly from an accounting practice point of view, and and the various accounting tools we've used to drag into play all the mitigation as to why this money has been lost. And if you recall, probably since last summer and earlier, we've been in constant dialogue as a football club with the Premier League. It's part of the reason now we didn't go too excited in the last summer transfer window, because we have to live within our means. And therefore, I don't think they're going to come after us because of what's happened in these accounts. And as we did on a show earlier on with Baz, we should remember that the last thing in these accounts happened last June. And we've been in dialogue continually with the Premier League since then as well. So the current financial year, which probably is not going to be great either when it finally gets published, probably this time next year, by which time we'll be mid-table looking upwards in the Premier League probably, is going to bear scrutiny as well. So we're in a mess, there's no doubt about that, Nick. But one of the things I said on the video, which I guess because you're a patron you'll see it later anyway, is that we may very well have brought our dead out in this and tried to get these accounts almost to clear the decks. Almost everything we can think of is in here. Yeah. Certainly it's what I would be doing over the last couple of years if I was influencing how this was done. I think the clarity around crystallised and uncrystallised losses is a bit of gobbledygook, So and I should put a health warning on this, really, that I've only read the strategic report. I've not read through all the accounts yet, but I'm sure Paul or some other pundit of that like will have analysed these, and we'll have some blogs to read soon anyway. But no, I don't think we're exposing ourselves to being chased down the street because we're trying to pull a fast one. And I think the club have said, and they did brief journalists yesterday, that we are still operating within the agreement for financial fair play. So we're not going to get penalised that way, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make it sound any better?
Throw one more question at you.
Go on.
Yeah, no, it does. It actually does make me feel a bit better. Yeah, it makes me feel a lot better to hear you say that. And this is something that I heard Bass and Ped hit on yesterday. Like, we are really in a precarious position due to the fact that we have ceased our sponsorship, relationship with USM and Megaphone and so forth.
Yeah.
And obviously with our precarious position in the table, we're not looking like probably the most appealing platform by which to advertise. You know what I mean?
Indeed.
We're not the most like effective darling when it comes to effective marketing. Are there any positive signs from where you sit in regards to the club actually kind of pulling together and having a plan moving forward? Because I feel like the commercial aspect of how the club is run has not always been the best it could be, and I'm saying that in the nicest way possible. Is there any movement in seeing any improvement to the situation in regards to us, I don't know, getting sponsorship and maybe executing more effectively when it comes to, the commercial side of the house?
No. Sorry.
That's okay.
I mean, part of the challenge here is we've got a leadership team which has been pretty much established since. If we just go back, I mean, Baz made a joke about maybe our footballing lives only started when Moshiri took over, a la, the Premier League, that's when football started. But if you look at the last,
Right.
it's only because in the accounts they referenced the last 6 years, but over those 6 years, notwithstanding people like Keith Harris have come and gone, Ismailov has come and gone, Brands have come and gone. Obviously, Denise and Bill have been persistent throughout that time. The people who were accountable previously for driving commercial growth, notably Alan McTavish, he's been around for the whole of that time. Yeah. The guy who's got it now, Richard Kenyon, he's been around for the whole of that time. You would like to think if any of the people I've named had it within them to make the commercial performance better, they'd have done it already. So I think we need to bring in people from outside with demonstrable track records to help those people. And if we just, because you were trying to be polite, being polite is let's not focus on getting rid of people, albeit that might happen naturally anyway. Let's focus on making the team better, and I'm talking about the off-field team here, and particularly around particularly around commercial growth. And I could well imagine that Farhad Moshiri is incredibly frustrated, because I would suspect he's pulled in favours from his mates, who are not Evertonians, and there must be huge volumes of Evertonians out there who hold large budgets, or budgets that we could tap into and try and get some of the wallet share of. And I don't see any basic 101 sales behaviours that tap into that, because if nothing else, every single time we announce a new commercial partner, we never say, and the chief exec of this company is an Evertonian, or and the chief finance director of this is an Evertonian. So I think there's probably an untapped seam there, which means if they, as a football club, don't know who the... I don't know either. How many of the FTSE 100 companies in this country, or the Fortune 500, have Evertonians on their board or can influence their board? I have no idea. But if I was the sales guy accountable, I'd find out, because selling to a friend is easier than selling to an enemy, or even indeed selling to a neutral person. So, no, I don't think until we enhance the quality and the experience of people accountable for driving commercial growth, I don't necessarily think it will grow unless we get more windfalls, which have been delivered by the largest shareholder. And as you rightly say, the sanctioning of Usmanov, and therefore the sanctioning of USM, that has an impact on us. I've no idea whether that impact will occur in this financial year, because if you take a very simplistic view, if all the monies that were coming from USM have already been handed over, we've got them, So the impact won't be in this financial year. But if it was a phased payment and we were due payments, we're not going to get them, are we?
No.
So we don't know what we don't know. But also there's a significant financial impact on Farhad Moshiri himself, because one suspects a lot of his personal wealth, the 2 or 3 billion that he's worth, comes from his shareholding in USM Holdings. And certainly I would have thought a significant, if not all his free cash, comes that way through dividends, none of which he's going to get. So it's a bit of a perfect storm of misfortune for everybody, overlaying on top of our own self-created misfortune. But one of the things I did say to Baz, or me and Baz talked about on the show, was these are moments when very strong leadership teams actually prove what they're worth. So if we've had doubts about our leadership team in the past, then they could set those aside by how they behave now. But unfortunately, they're now probably started 18 months ago. And as we haven't seen it, we've seen very much defensive actions about seeking to avoid scrutiny and stuff like that, rather than fronting it up and explaining to people what's happening, what we're doing about it, and to pull together.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. No, I think you make an excellent point. Like when you just said that, like times like these prove the quality of the caliber of your leadership team. And I think that when you are pinched and when you're put in a high pressure, high density, high demand situation, your worth and your character, it's apparent, and it either rises to the top or it doesn't. You either meet the occasion or you don't. And what I guess I'm most worried about is I've been waiting for somebody within Everton as a player, whether it's a player or what. And Lampard has kind of, in the short time he's been there, probably done this more than anybody else. Somebody has to step up and say, follow me.
Indeed.
I've got the plan. This is what we have to do. And what you have to go. And even if the plan's not perfect, it can be adjusted on the fly. But it just doesn't feel like anyone has stood up and said, we've got this. Here's what we're going to do. Let's go. And normally people will fall in behind said person.
Yeah, they're absolutely. First followers, are actually some of the good people, but they still have to have somebody to follow, and the massive followers follow the first followers, who in turn follow the leader, the person, as you rightly say, who sticks up. And that doesn't have to be a hierarchical leader. So if we're being critical here, and we were talking earlier on about there's 30 odd heads of department at Everton Football Club. We only needed one of them to stand up and be counted, and somebody would follow them, and somebody would follow them, and so on. Yeah. So it's unfortunate, but the analogy just sounds too easy to make. So I'm going to make it, which is the capitulation of the playing side when they hit a bump in the road potentially is matched with the off-field team as well. That they're feeling so pressured and so what shall we do, that they actually can't perform, really. They're more scared of getting it wrong than getting it right, So all the old cliches like don't ask permission, ask forgiveness, all those sorts of things are probably in a bottom drawer somewhere with a key that's locked in a cupboard, which is in another cupboard, and so on, because people are just fearful of getting it wrong. And when you get into that situation, then jeopardy goes away. Yeah. You're frozen. It's the classic rabbit in headlights, You know you're going to get splattered all over the road, but you still don't run out the way, And so if we sleepwalk into the Championship, then it's hopefully a once-in-a-generation thing, but it might be the last thing many fans ever remember, because once you get down into that pit, then it's by no means certain you're going to come straight back again. And in many respects, scaremongers will clearly, and rightly so, talk about the Armageddon that relegation would bring. But that pales into insignificance almost to the Armageddon that what happens if you don't come back first time. Because you get... Right. Because you have... The passage of time means players can choose to leave at the end of contract and so on. So, A, stop it happening. Don't get relegated. Yeah. And B, recognise that whatever you've been doing, you haven't doing it as good as needed. Yeah. And do something about it. And we've been told months and months and months ago that a strategic review's in progress. For all I know, it's finished. I've no idea. I've no idea whatsoever whether such a review was actually was happening objectively. None of us knew what its intentions was. None of us know what the timetable was. So therefore, none of us know whether it's finished or not. But we do know that we've lost directors, we've appointed new managers, and we've done other things which you would all think have an impact on such a plan. Yeah. So, as you rightly say, Nick, if you can't adjust the plan in flight, because you don't have the skills, experience and competence to do that, then you could be, you being an Air Force guy, your plane could be up in the air, right? You're heading somewhere and you've no idea how to turn around. None whatsoever. Yeah. And the payload just gets heavier and heavier as a consequence. So
yeah, and the fuel, and you're running out of fuel.
Absolutely,
you have finite resources to keep you in the air. No,
and there's some nutcase on the gate at the back, hanging on by a bungee.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, that's me. That's me on the tailgate. But no, maybe we all have to be aware of our biases and our perspective limitations.
Yeah, we're cognitive.
And for me, I think because I've had to work in a career where I'm up against the ragged edge probably more than the average bear, and I understand that there's risk involved in everything that you do, and that old adage of without great risk, you don't make great reward. I think that what's happened is is that the people at the club, players and staff and everything, have been so comfortable for so long, they're not comfortable being next to the edge. And because they are so close to the edge, they are entirely risk averse, and you can't do that. That you have to, when you're in a situation like this, there's risk involved in every move you make. And in fact, there may be greater risk when you do nothing at all. So even the wrong thing can be better than doing nothing at all.
Always.
Because even one wrong decision, the lesson you learn from that can put you in a position where you've been given the answer of what to do and how to course correct and get out of the situation that you're in. I think that that's what worries me more than anything else, and I've struggled to articulate it, whether it be online or in WhatsApp groups or anywhere, is that there's been no change. Yes, we got a new manager in. Yes, there was a strategic review done, but I've seen so many troubling signs that we're still doing the same things and expecting a different result. How many things have come out in the media that we should have been ahead of as far as narrative steering goes, that we've just let the story run before we've had any input in getting ahead of it? And like you said, I think that the problem that we're dealing with is systemic of the entire organization, from the pitch all the way to the front office. And I'm really worried because I haven't seen these people do anything to demonstrate to me that they understand A, the danger that they're in, or B, what the cost of inaction might be.
I think you're right, yeah.
Even doing the wrong thing can get you to where you need to be. I mean, nobody ever got anywhere. You got to crack some eggs to make an omelet, right? And you're gonna have to make mistakes and fail to learn what you need to get the job done. And I honestly believe that. And I was just hoping that maybe you were going to say, no, Nick, it's all good. There's some positives here and there, and obviously that you being so much closer and having the relationships you do, you're privy to more insight than me. I'm a very, very, very worried Evertonian at the moment. And that I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon.
Join the club, mate. But you, in some respects, you have to keep the faith, I suppose. But you're quite you're quite right. I mean, I used to lecture people when I was working for other people and say the only bad idea is no idea. And controlling narrative and all those glib phrases are really important. And there's very little in my mind true engagement and therefore connection between the football club and its fan base at the moment. And therefore, it's very difficult for them to change right now. So I think they just have to keep their eye on the ball as a team. And I mean, that's the on-field and off-field team. Because the only thing that truly matters is securing Premier League, being in the Premier League next season. Everything else pales into insignificance in comparison. And actually, none of the off-field team, probably with the exception of Bill, it goes and does pep talks and things, can impact that at all. So they are just passengers at the moment.
Well, we all are.
Yeah.
We all are.
Well, we're not, because we can turn up on a match day and try and do our bit.
We can, but all of our hopes and saving us the embarrassment is in the players' hands. So,
sorry, mate. I just wanted to get something else. Nick said he talks about his day job. My day job in the past, I would often say to people, and I could be a right mischievous, awkward pain in the ass when you're having the downtime.
Not much has changed then.
No, really. but the harder it was, the better I performed. I came into my own when a deal got so complex it made people's head hurt, or you had to make decisions, daily, hourly.
I love chaos. I love chaos.
You and me both, my friend.
Chaos. I love chaos. It breeds opportunity.
It does.
Breeds opportunity, and it gives you new ways to perform.
It does.
You find just how good you are when you're pinched.
Absolutely.
And I love that challenge. And I don't know. I see, and I think that's kind of what frustrates me, is that why is nobody other than Frank Lampard seeing the opportunity of this moment that it provides? Because Everton is crying out for a leader. Everton is crying out for one player to just go, no, I'm not going to take this. I'm going to put it on my back. And you better get behind me, and you better come with me, because if you don't, I'm going to drag you along, and it's going to be a whole lot more painful if I have to drag you. You're never going to hear the end of it. And that's what scares me. Is that. Sorry. This is
you're
not what I intended to have my comments to be, but it's just the way it is.
Nick.
Are you going to let someone else have a go?
Yeah, nice one.
Cheers,
Listen,
Nick.
Keep your head up, mate.
Sorry.
We've 11 games.
Cheers.
We need 11 points. Keep the faith and let's hope that it's it.
And I look forward to your pre-match rah-rah as well.
Therefore, take it easy, big man. See you soon.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Cheers, Nick.
Bye.
Nick, normally very upbeat Astro. He's not today, but listen, I'm sure as we get closer to the game, we will do. He'll be back up for it. Russ says, I'm a Leeds fan and having suffered being out of the Premier League for 16 long years, can totally understand the Evertonians' concerns. That's it, isn't it? We don't want to. We don't want to.
As a Leeds fan listening to you.
Loads. Come on, listen.
Well done, guys.
It's live. It's difficult, isn't it? It is. It's a scary place. Adam, this is an interesting question. What's John's opinion on the Esk and how credible he may or may not be?
Well, I need to know what credible means. I mean, Paul's a bright guy, okay, and he has a particular interest in the financial side, and he's very good at interpreting the black and white that's in the accounts.
Yeah.
So that makes him very credible. Yeah.
Okay. But also, he only doesn't know what he doesn't know.
Nobody knows what they don't know. Yeah.
So it is that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go.
And he's an Evertonian, by the way.
Yeah, there you go. That's good. Niall says, all right, lads, hope all is well. Not sure if it's been said yesterday, but the financial reports has me constantly thinking about Ken Knight's quote that other clubs look at us and wish they were ran like us.
That's not what he said, though, is it? He said he often gets told, what would Everton do?
Yeah.
Yeah. We've no idea
what the
in what context was.
Yeah.
It was probably to do with charitable and community stuff, because it can't have been
to do
with footballing stuff.
No,
can it?
not at all. Yeah. Carla says, Everton are bad when Astro can't get up for the game.
He will be up for the game.
He'll be all right. Georgie says, one of my questions was going to be, when we go to Bramley Moor, surely they've got to get better food than local pies and ale. Well, I expect, we talk about opportunity for people. There's an opportunity there for local businesses, isn't there? Independent food companies and stuff like that, maybe to get on there.
The football club has a problem because it has so many people who lack experience in matters other than at the football club. I used to have this argument a lot with Robert Elston, who took what he thought were safe decisions by outsourcing parts of the service provision that was losing money, most notably retail and then catering. Okay. And I was a 20-year outsourcing guy, so I used to buy this stuff, sell this stuff, outsourcing, right? Yeah. So I know the pros and cons and all that. The reality is, though, service providers are only as good as whoever pays their bills. And what we have at the moment, I think, is a hands-off approach to dealing with, say, Sodexo or to Kitbag or Fanatics, whether the name stays, whatever it stays. And we need to just be far more hands-on and recognise that we haven't given something away, i.e. outsourcing is a bit of a dodgy name, isn't it, really? Yeah. We haven't given away responsibility and accountability for that. We're bringing in expertise that we didn't think we had. That's the way to think about it. And therefore, we still have to lead it. And therefore, if we said to our catering provider, we want to enrich the offerings and we want it to encourage use of local produce and all that sort of stuff, they would. So it's like the other stuff we talked about a few minutes ago with Astro, It's about leadership. And it's about leadership based on experience, and experience being not just at this football club. Because anyone who's been at this football club for 5 to 10 years has known Elston, safety first. They've known Denise, focus on or charity, and then focus on new build stadium. And I think they've all taken their eyes off the BAU type stuff, and therefore we've got rafts and rafts of people who probably not being led properly. Short answer is yes. The fan zone is going to be huge. There's going to be lots of concessions in there, and let's hope they. If we get into, as we should, get into a situation where there's more people who want to be on site than places there are, then we give them quite strict rules on what we expect. And local beer, local breweries, local pie makers or whatever, whatever floats your boat, rather than just a very, vanilla, let's have a McDonald's and let's have a KFC.
Well, have them, but
have them as well, but also have the artisan type stuff. And that will drag people. Look at him shaking his head over there.
Don't have any chains in it.
There will be though, won't there?
Why
There will be. There will be.
You get chain food anywhere you want.
I think there will be.
Well, because people want it sometimes.
Get good local products in there.
Well, I agree with that.
Well, we have just
As well as, not instead of.
Franchises as well.
Of course they are.
So I wouldn't go anywhere near them.
Everton could be a franchise. Be the franchise holder itself.
Manchester City's franchise.
Yeah, well, they have Jamie Oliver, don't they? So.
No, I wish Everton were Manchester City.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, but there is. I think there's room for both.
There is room for both, and you've got to cover all tastes. And at the end of the day, if you say to a 5-year-old what you want to do, and they say I want to go to McDonald's, so, well, actually, no, you can have this locally produced burger instead. No, I want me toy. You know, I want me Happy Meal.
Yeah.
Eh?
No, you know.
You get a toy or a book. Toy or a book. Yeah.
John might know. He takes his granddaughter.
Take Essie. Yeah. She always picks a toy and gets a book. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's it, isn't it? I think you've got to give everyone as big a choice you can, because you've got to get as many people in there as you can. You don't want people going, I'm not going in because I want to go here or whatever. Yeah, but you can have that on site. Give Everton the money. Yeah. Ultimately, that's what Everton wants.
I think what will sneak up on the club if they're not careful is all the things that they would like to do before we move into the new stadium don't start soon enough.
Yeah.
Because, again, talking about, let's sit on our hands and wait and see if we get relegated first. Yeah. Oh, we didn't get relegated. Oh, good. You know, everything from pre-season tours to whatever can all go in abeyance. Well, no, you don't do that. You just run scenarios, you know. Yeah. This is what our pre-season looks like if we're in the Premier League. This is what it looks like if we're not. Yes. And then it's, rather than waiting, and I'm sure that's what they're doing. But
Kunal Desai says Everton are where they are because people at the club make the easy and lazy decisions. No thought process or research goes into decision making.
I don't think that's true at all. I think, if anything, they have a propensity to over-research, get advisors in, and everything takes too long. And then, of course, what happens when you behave like that is you make the decision too slow. I think one thing they are consistently doing, in my mind, just because of the background I've got, is making decisions later than they could and should have. But I think the approval process, what's the guy's name?
Hang on.
Because it's a good question. Yeah, Kunal, good question, my friend. Because I think the approval process is what's tortuous, you know. And so
it is, but we know from just asking normal questions how long it takes to get a simple.
Journalists the same. They ask a question, you know, anything, and we've talked about it here. Anything that perhaps they think they should bounce off Farhad Mashiri or bounce off Bill could have days, if not weeks, to an answer. Well, if you're not giving me the answer today, forget it. Just tell me. Sorry, you won't get that today, you know.
Russ says you haven't looked at all your remaining fixtures. Russ, a Leeds fan, of course. I'm predicting you'll get the additional 11-12 points required to ensure your Premier League status. What are your thoughts on required? I think 11, Russ. I think 36 points will keep us up, to be honest.
I think teams with less points than that will stay up.
I want Everton to get at least 36 points, and then I'll be all right.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think Leeds will be all right as well, by the way.
Leeds will be okay, I think now. Emmy says, do you think there is a decent young core that could secure promotion next year if we were relegated, assuming we'd have to sell Pickford, Dom, Richarlison, Godfrey? I don't know whether we would sell Godfrey. I don't think we can't sell everyone. I think Pickford would want to go because he's England's #1 goalie, and that's obviously very important.
World Cup.
He'd want to go World Cup and all that. Spurs apparently sniffing around them. I don't know how accurate that is, but so Jordan Pickford may go. I imagine Dom and Richie would go if Everton were relegated. After that, you start looking and going, well, Alan might go, but there's already talk that Lazio want him and he may go back to Italy anyway. But after that, I don't think there's many. Godfrey, I don't think he'd go, because where would he go? He's not really. Other teams might come in.
Isn't he technically a Championship player?
Exactly, so he come out the Championship. So I think you can't get rid of everyone, Emmy, can you? So I think you'd be left with, you know, maybe Begovic would be your goalie. I don't know. Or you'd get another one. And then you'd have, like, Patterson, Michalenko. They're not going anywhere. Branthwaite would be in there. Holgate, probably.
Gordon would
but I think you'd get someone, wouldn't you? You'd go and buy a centre-back as well. You'd have Godfrey, Reece Welsh, you'd come into it, and then in midfield, you'd have the Corey, Tom Davis, Onyango, Lewis Warrington probably, and then Everton would probably try to add another couple of ones in there for, like, you know, players on the way up, maybe at other Championship clubs or whatever. And then up top, you'd have Gordon would be in the fight. I think Gray would probably be all right for the season. You'd have Ellis Sims would come back. You'd have to get a striker, of course you would. You know, maybe they keep Rondon for another year and he becomes the focal point. It's not great, but Everton would need to buy as well. But they'd make some money from selling those three, wouldn't they? So you'd have players that I think could get Everton out of the Championship, yes. But like John said before, it's one and done. If Everton go down, they've got to come straight back up. If it goes into 2 years, the whole club is in dire straits then. But the easiest thing to do is just get the 11 points. And then because we're going to need to reset anyway in the summer. We do need a total rethink in the summer. Cut people from the club off the pitch, cut people on the pitch out the club, get rid of people and start to turn over and say things like, the maximum we pay at this football club is 80 grand a week.
We don't like
Get rid of 130, 40. You don't come then. Because we want to get you. Start getting players in. So, if you do the business for us, though, we'll steep you up. You will move up and up the chain. Maybe go back to how Moyes used to do it, where only a couple were on top wages. Spurs had 3, didn't they? Tottenham had choose 3 who were on like Harry Kane and who were on the big money. And that's the only way to try to start to turn the scales the other way, where by peeling back those wages, where your players are saying, we're on 80 grand a week. If you're on 150, you have to play for someone else.
I think, I mean, the things that happened, have only happened in the past when, some players been really fragile and therefore no one wants them because they're sick notes, So you'd put them on a pay-as-you-play type thing, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I think those sorts of incentives will become more normal. Because you can't have a Delph on 80 grand a week doing nothing.
No.
You cannot have Toast and go, no, I'll just sit here and try and get a tan in this crap country, until the summer because I don't want to be injured. Or which is fundamentally, I guess, what he's trying. I don't know, but
he just likes the big. He knows he's not getting this contract.
That's right. Again. Yeah, so we keep it. But in that context, there's always ways and means. If Tosin's on 80 grand a week and some club in Turkey are only going to pay him 20, and we pay the 60 and we save 20. It's like Angry Birds. You can be high and mighty, but you're the one who's left holding, holding the parcel when the music stops.
You may as well have the £4.5 million quid for 3 years off them than not nothing.
Yeah.
So but there'll have to be, regardless of whether we go down, Emmy, or not, there's got to be, for us anyway, there's got to be a reset anyway, regardless. It's got to be very harsh, really, for me.
Yeah, but you just watch us do what Brands wanted to do 3 years ago.
Probably in the end, and then he'd just might be sat there going, well, hang on, I told you to do this 3 years ago. I mean, the Piv, Andy, he's always saying it, we could do this, and this, and it didn't instantly make things better. Like, it mightn't be... I think us as fans as well, and maybe just need to look and go, well, let's aim for like 7th. Not next year, because we'll have to, you could get there, but let's think about putting blocks in first, like to get to that position. I think the problem is we've all kind of gone, we get him, we're going to finish, we can get in the top 4 or the top 6. And we need to be better than that. And you get there by doing what Leicester done, but go get him, and that'll make us a bit better. And then we get him, and that makes us a bit better. And these are players on the way up. And start to get in our heads as Evertonians as well. We're going to buy John Blaine, but in 2 years, if things go well, we're selling him for 60 million. And we'll reinvest that. And we'll buy Ned. And in 2 years, we'll sell Ned for a Mars bar. Because we lose on. Now, and that's what you have to try to do, don't you?
Paige had walked into the women's team, though, wouldn't she?
Oh, she's waltzing. So you have to start doing that thing of like accepting that if you buy 4 players, one of them maybe you're going to sell, and then you do it again. And it's not even, when people go, that's sell to buy, it's not even sell to buy. It's good housekeeping. It's just business. You keep it going. You keep it ticking over. And by doing that, you might jump 4 places because your players are better. Leeds last year were all basically championship players with Rafinha, who was great. Patrick Bamford hadn't really done anything but had a great season. And they just missed out on Europe by a win, the same as we did. Yet they had championship players running through brick walls. And yet we've Moyes done this. He bought players on the up. But we've done certain things. We've just totally done the opposite in the last 6 years and gone, we've got loads of money. Why don't we have you? But anyway...
It's called the lack of a plan. Yeah.
It is called the lack of a plan. Ahmed's on the phone. Ahmed's the top man.
You're all right. How are you doing, lads?
I'm sound, Ahmed. How are you? You're on with John as well. So,
hi, mate.
Ask away, mate.
Yeah. Well, it's actually because John was here. I thought it would be pertinent to bring this up. It's a bit of a diversion away from Everton. It's got Everton involved in it, but I'm just interested with the way transfers are moving these days. So you're finding teams. It started with Juventus, who are going for the big free transfers. Barcelona adopted that model, and they've just signed Kessié. They're going into Mazraoui, Aubameyang, Memphis. Then you've got all our players leaving on free transfers. Mbappe, and then you've got Pogba at Man United. Do you think there's going to be a shift? Obviously, there's always going to be a place for transfer fees, because if you want a player and you need a player and they're locked in a contract, you need to release that contract. But do you think there's going to be, because transfer fees are so astronomical, there's going to be a shift away from paying these huge fees and just waiting, saying, okay, we'll wait a year or two, contract goes out, and we'll get the player on a free, give them a sign-on fee, much like the American model. And with the increase in American owners we're having, I think Ped's already mentioned it, that they just don't get transfer fees. So do you think we'll get that shift in the future?
I think there's always a couple of things, isn't it? I think it's a damn good question, by the way. These things are all about supply and demand. Okay, so if Harry Kane or Haaland becomes available and 10 clubs want them, then and transfer fees clearly can still exist, then there are going to be those odds and sods of exceptional talents who demand is so high that transfers stay so high. But I think where it all went crazy was when relatively average players suddenly start moving around for 25, 30 million quid. And you say, hang on a minute, if I sign this guy on a 5-year contract, he's cost me 100 grand a week just for the transfer fee at 25 mil. And we've already started to see the movement, because 3 years is the new 5 years, isn't it? You know, now contracts are shorter, because clubs don't want to be hamstrung by inflated salaries.
Well, I think that's a really good point, actually, because you see clubs now protecting themselves against this as well. No one's getting 5-year contracts are reserved for sub 25-year-old players now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And anything above that's like 3-year contract, so it's an easy out for the player or the club. We're seeing, we were part of that, as you say, you mentioned the mediocre players going for 30, 45 million in some cases. And I think the appetite for that has moved out the game as well. That's my personal opinion. I think you raise a good point about contract lengths. I think even you'll get performance-related contracts with managers. So if you don't hit this target, we can sack you with a minimal payoff. I think that'll be the next step as well, but that's just something I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think, when I've spoken to, not just at Everton as well, when I've talked to execs in the Premier League, they got themselves locked into it was always a seller's market, and the seller is a guy called an agent. And some of those agents have been driving the market in a manner that suits them. But I think as time goes on, the contract terms become shorter. Inevitably, therefore, the amortization of transfer fees then becomes shorter. So if you buy a player for 90 million and he's on a 3-year contract, you're paying 30 million a year just for the transfer fee, through your P&L and stuff. So I think that, and I think you're right about the performance related stuff, but it really needs just, again, Baz was talking about, followers and stuff, just set your plan. If as a football club you say, right, we do not pay a player more than this because that's what we've decided is what we can afford. We do not put players of this age on contracts longer than this, and so on and so forth. And, I used to do a lot of scuba diving, sort of like 300 or 400 dives or something. And you sit or you stand on the beach, hopefully with a beer or a barbie on the beach, deciding what you're going to do when you get in the water. And one of your group always wants to go and do something else. Because when you're on the beach with a beer and a burger or whatever, and you're saying, let's not go into that wreck at 100 feet because it's not a good idea, why does it suddenly become a good idea when you get in the water? Yeah? And so the phrase we would have for that, and I was a dive master, was you plan the dive and then you dive the plan. And that requires discipline. Yeah. Okay. Because you see something really interesting, you say, but that's not in the plan, so we're not going to do it. So in the calm light of day, you get in a room, and this is almost like the Moneyball sitting around the table type thing, and you say, these are the basics of how we do business. We don't pay more than this. We don't put guys on contracts longer than this. We don't renew contracts when somebody is at this age. Or if they won't renew contracts this far in, that if we do want to keep them, then we get rid of them. And then you stick to that. And it's really risky, because that means you're sitting there right now saying, as an example, we could be in a situation where we're saying, come what may, we're going to sell this player, because all the boxes have been ticked which say sell him. And you do that, but then you're transparent with agents and you're transparent with players about what that means for them, which means they're not locked in, but they always have the opportunity to win a new contract. Because 2-3 year contracts is 6 years. Just don't give them the 6 years. Do 2-3 years, you know?
I think just using the Barcelona model, they clearly identified that Messi's 34. And as shocking as it was at the time, they were like, we can't afford this. And it makes no financial sense to have a player on £100 million a year, or whatever he was on, £50 million a year. And there will be you can't, there's no consistency to that plan, because in 2 years, you're going to have to rip everything up. And actually, I think it's probably worked out for the best for them. But, exactly, I completely agree with you, John.
See, they didn't do that through choice, though. It was forced upon them. Yeah? You know, it was forced upon them by... It
might have been a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, it was forced on them by regulation. But you are right. And so the first mover in behaving like this should get financial strength. And you know, and in many respects, that might be what UEFA should have done with financial fair play: set the rules of what you can and can't do, rather than just trying to deal with the outcome. You know. Yeah,
that's true, actually. Well, that was a very interesting chat. Thanks, lads, and it's been, I'm enjoying the show a lot. See you later,
mate.
Nice one, Ahmed. Take care, mate.
Take care, mate.
See you later. There you go, Ahmed. Right, I'm just gonna sub myself for a minute. Pedro, you gonna dart in?
Subbing yourself.
Subbing yourself. There you go.
Do you think some players do that?
Well, yeah. All the time.
See, the youngsters have to have a rest. But... Right, get ready, people. It's going to get livelier now.
Off. I don't know why my wife put my headphones on.
Because they were there.
They were. Give us a call. Even if you're not after Ghostbusters. John's here. He wants to hear. We've got a caller on right now. Have we got Brian on?
Brian, yeah.
Oh, Brian.
Is that what that means? Put your headphones on, basically.
Basically, those words there suggest that someone's calling. John,
brilliant.
It's
going to tell us about his life.
It's like a 21st century company, isn't it?
Oh wow!
You know
Come on, Brian.
Brian, are you there?
Oh, Pat.
Okay.
Oh. Are you well today, Pat?
Go on, mate.
Have you spoken to Brian before, have you?
Probably. If I haven't, I'm,
It clearly wasn't when you were sober.
No. Any more of that, you'll get a full Will Smith. Go on.
You try and reach me from there, mate. Just have a go.
Well, Go on, mate.
People have got to realise, everyone within the club and the supporters too, have got to realise that football is a business. Always has been, always will be. If it wasn't, we'd still be playing on the other side of the park. Yeah. What I don't get is how businesses are allowed to run with such debt. Okay? Not because I'm not a businessman, but I'm sure Toffee TV don't go and buy new microphones on the promise of next year's patron income. How does this happen? Running a multi-million-pound business without any financial discipline, okay? They're not investing within the means. It's lunacy. So you need the whole entire organisation needs to be rationalised. It's got to be slimmed down. You've got to get rid of all those non-jobs, if you like.
Yeah.
With people just walking around with smiling on their face and carrying a piece of paper. The entire organisation has to be more effective in order to provide more effective performances on the pitch. But as there won't be any performances on the pitch if there's no business. And I really don't understand how so many football clubs can be run like this. I remember QPR and Mark Hughes giving us fantasy wages when there was just no income for it, no cover for it. And Everton, if they, like other clubs, if they don't sort themselves out, they're going to be going down the plug hole, I'm afraid.
Absolutely. John?
It's a statement, isn't it, rather than a question, but...
yes.
Yeah.
So,
no, it's okay.
I'm
it's
not
okay.
going to ask you how.
Yeah, I mean, I think buried in there's the question of how can this be allowed to happen, right? So you'd like to think that any business would sit around a table with the right people in the room and say, okay, what are our ambitions for next year, in football terms, next season? And at some stage, the sporting director says, well, to achieve that, we'll have to invest in the squad. You know, many businesses invest ahead of time. In fact, it's quite normal, you know, but they don't have cycles of performance that are so short. Yeah. And the cycle of performance for a football club isn't even the financial year, because that's typically out of kilter with the football season. But it's soon, 3 months into the season, you think, you know what, we bought Ped for 85 million quid from Man United because we expected him to score 50 goals for us. If he scored those 50 goals, we'd finish second, get in the Champions League, and we'd easily get the money back. After 3 months, he's just broken his leg. He'd only scored 6 goals, and we're not anywhere near finishing second. So we've sunk the investment, and we're not going to get the return. Now, when you fail to invest effectively, most businesses will get into difficulties, yeah. And you're quite right. You have to take emergency action, which might mean slimming down your structure, slimming down your business, cutting costs. In the big bad world of, say, manufacturing or something, you no doubt would make people redundant, potentially invest in robots if you're old enough to remember when we didn't have those things, and so on and so forth. But I think the sunny day plan, which is what I'm referring to, where you think we just need this last player and everything will be great, they're deluded. And often they are very sensible businessmen, people who've made themselves billionaires like Mr. Mashiri, but allow them to make footballing decisions and they sort of behave like it's fantasy football, which is you can always do Alt Control Delete and start again, you know. So I think the answer is, and we talked about it with Hamed, I think, is having a plan and sticking to it, and making your decisions not in the moment under pressure or emotional or fear of loss or whatever it might be type pressures, but have a basis of we're never going to do this, we're always going to do that, and have still give yourself some room to take opportunity, because you don't want to have a rule that you see a real opportunity. You could get Ped for 20 million instead of 90 and you say, oh no, we're not doing that because it wasn't in the plan. You've still got to have some freedom for almost impulsive behaviours, reactionary, taking advantage of the moment, but the foundation of your business needs to be operating to understood rules and regulations and policies and those sorts of things. And we have at Everton, we have all the people, according to the heads of the department type job titles, to do that, but we don't seem to do it, which means there's intercepts coming from on high, which just do what they want. And you live with the consequences.
Well, I think what a lot of it is down to, what we've been suffering from for many years, is a weak leadership. If any company performs on the directives from above, there can be no discussion about. And it seems like Mashiri through Ken Wright and Denise are all little too nicey. There's no power behind their words, and there's no message filtering down through the organisation, which has produced a blasé attitude. And it's got to go. It's got to go.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I've said many times that when people, and they do, say Mashiri should make more decisions or be more visible or whatever, or Mashiri appointed Allardyce, Mashiri appointed Silva, Mashiri appointed Benitez, Mashiri appointed Lamp, and all those sorts of things. Every time you allow the general consensus to feel one man who happens to be a billionaire makes all the decisions, you do absolve the board for their fiduciary duty to run the business properly. So, it should appear in the minutes of meetings, which we won't see like forever, that all the board disagreed about the appointment of this man, but the owner made us, sort of thing. But if they've got testicular fortitude, those board members, they say, well, if you're not going to listen to our advice, there's no point us being here. So they resign, you know. And we've never had senior execs walk away because somebody's interfering with the running of the business. Therefore, to my mind, if you don't walk away, you're either just happy to take the money, or you actually agree with what the largest shareholder's decision making was in the moment, and therefore you are accountable for the outcome. So you're right, my friend. I tend to think it's more about not being prepared to say no to him than actually agreeing with him.
Yeah.
It's just the way this attitude is molested, and it's developed. It seems to have spread from, I don't know if it's from the boardroom downwards, as I suspect, because it's all too Mr. We're all very nice, Everton. We do it the right way. We do it. We are the good guys. You know, there's no discipline within the club. It doesn't appear. There's no direction. There's no fear in the club. If the boss at the top turns around and says, "This is my business. I own it. This is what I want. Go and produce it." And there's got to be a kick up the backside every now and again, because there's nothing filtering down. Even the fan base is losing it. Can you imagine that? 5-10 years ago?
Yeah, that's it.
We are losing it.
Yeah.
And that was just unthinkable. It was unfathomable thought.
The gap between the fan base and the football club's probably never been wider.
No.
I can quite agree, and I've seen a lot of dross in my time, believe me. But
must be old like me then.
I've got a bit more hair still, but anyway.
Yeah, well. Have you got a big willy though?
No, not as big as yours. No.
Pardon? He started it. We need you on screen, mate, so we can see whether you're talking rubbish or not. Yeah.
Brian, thanks for the call, mate.
Come in, Brian.
We'll speak to you later. Ta-da,
Well, it's not easy from over here. I'm in Sweden.
We're not. Well, you go.
I didn't know that.
Don't be out there, trying to catch any moose or anything.
You can always blame the cold then for your other problem. Yeah.
Cheers, Brian.
The fact that I don't freeze on my head when it's time.
The insult.
I don't walk around with icicles hanging down.
That's it.
I can put a hat on, mate. What do you do?
Right. Thanks very much, Brian.
I've got an answer for that, but I wouldn't put it on her.
Of course you will.
I've never heard the like of it in my life.
Thanks, Brian. Enjoy that, my friend.
Age throwing insults at each other. Oh,
switching to sleep mode, it says on the monitor up there.
Cheers.
This one page, the other one.
Ned? No, Ned? Oh, you know what? I feel working with idiots, honest to God.
That doesn't include Page, does it?
No, not Page. Page is amazing. One question there. Well, it wasn't really a question, but something you sort of brought up there was you were talking about like long-term plans and stuff. Is there a problem with that? Do normal businesses they'll work obviously strategies that'll be like 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
One of Everton's major problems is they seem to make decisions season on season rather than making long-term decisions that they have confidence in the decision that will take 3, 4, 5 years. Do you think that's a problem they suffer from?
We don't know, do we? Because they're not, in the past, they haven't been prepared to share that. I mean, they always, and I've deliberately say it this way, they always hide behind commercial sensitivities, and we can't tell you because it's commercially sensitive, which is a pretty poor stock response. I mean, in Brands' early days, he would do some what you might perceive to be strategic thinking about this is what we need to do with the squad. Clearly he had some views and policies around how old they can be, how long we're going to put them under contract, and therefore, as we were talking earlier on, how much we might pay them. But you're right, I think we come across as very reactive, which is actually the nature of the beast. If you had a 3-year plan and said this is what we're going to do, and a critical member of that plan was the team manager, and you sacked him 6 months later, then you have to rejig the plan, don't you? Yeah. But that's all it should be, and you need to run scenarios. What if? What if this happens? What if that happens? Yeah. And that's all part of your strategic planning process. And it's classic where we are right now. if we could all go back 6 years in time, somebody would get hold of Farhad Mashiri and say, mate, in 6 years you will have spent £500 million.
Don't do that.
Yeah, and we'll be in danger of relegation. So let's do it a different way, you know. And we talked about it, me and Baz, earlier on, you know, maybe it was even here before, a bit of both really. We may end up doing what Brands wanted to do 3 or 4 years too late.
Yeah.
But it's actually never too late to do things the right way. So,
no, I just think that we seem to be caught in a spiral of going, and it's getting worse because of our positions getting worse, is that we don't ever look past that season. I think that was part of like the Rafa Benitez appointment of, we just want to get through this season, or certainly the seasons leading up to Bramley Moor, without it being actually a strategy to take us into Bramley Moor as a team that are challenging for Europe or whatever. It always felt like to me like it was a strategy of, let's just get through this season, and then let's just get through next season, and let's get through the next season, and then let's get to Bramley Moor. Without ever thinking, well, no, we're a business, so let's think as a business would, which clearly wouldn't be 1 year at a time. And you know, and I struggle with this thing of a business successful businessman working in those parameters. I really find that strange.
Well, you're spot on. I mean, the planning horizon cannot be so short. I mean, clearly you have to recognise that things can happen that may compromise your plan, and then you adapt it. But you're right, we just seem to roll from one short-term objective to the next, and that is never optimal. It's impossible to be optimal doing it that way.
Right, we've got Everton on the line.
That's a nice
which
name.
Is an incredible name.
Maybe it's a secret person.
Maybe it is. Ned.
Yeah, there we go. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go on, mate.
Awesome, man.
What's your name, really?
All right, as you said, my name's Everton. I was actually named after my dad. My dad's name is
brilliant.
Everton.
So you're Everton Jr.?
I am. Yes, I am Everton Jr. Yeah, I'm from a little island. I'm from a little island in the Caribbean called St. Lucia. I'm not sure
I've
if you
been
guys
there.
have ever
Beautiful.
heard of St.
Of
Lucia.
course, John's been everywhere, so of course he's been to St. Lucia.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. I've been an Everton supporter for like over a decade now. For the last 10, 11 years, they're about just towards the end of Moises' tenure, and then into Roberto Martinez and every other manager that's followed him afterwards, because we seem to change managers like every season. Yeah, but it's been a real roller coaster, man. Like being like hearing from Baz and Ped, and hearing from you guys, and I know you guys have been. This club is part of your life. You have your family members who are Everton supporters. You've grown up being an Everton supporter, so I don't have that sort of connection.
Well, you've got a name. Your name's Everton, though.
I only have the connection. Yeah. Yeah, well, that.
My dad didn't have the bottle.
Other than
My
that,
dad
man,
didn't have the bottle to call me Everton.
Guess what? I'm surrounded. Being from St. Lucia, I'm surrounded by Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal supporters. Like in the Caribbean on a whole, I might actually be. We have a population of about 180,000 people, and I might be the only Everton supporter in that 180,000 people. Yeah. You know, I'm pretty sure that I am, because I get told off for being an Everton supporter all the time. You know, just because of recent times and, you know, not winning a trophy in 25, 26 years. And that's almost my lifespan, man. I'm 30 years old, so I've actually never seen, like, I was really small when Everton won their last trophy. So I've never seen Everton like really celebrate a club. I've only seen it on YouTube to see them take a trophy and lift it and see the joy in people's eyes, and you know, that kind of vibe. I came to, that was I would say the 13-14 season was Roberto Martinez's first season, right?
That was the best season in a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, I came to England in like 14, 15, and I came to Goodison Park to see Everton play for the very first time. That's the first time I've ever been to see a Premier League match in my life. That's the first and last time.
Oh.
And Everton played West Brom, and we lost 1-0. I think it was Rondon who scored. Was
I think
it?
so, yeah. Wasn't that the
I
game
think,
that
I'm not
James
sure if it
McCarthy
was
broke
him.
his leg in? I think it might have been it might have been,
no.
yeah.
No.
Oh, no, wasn't it that one? No,
that wasn't the game.
Yeah.
No, I remember watching that game on TV at home in St. Lucia. So he definitely didn't break his leg in that game. But I can remember the atmosphere, and I could remember the whole vibe with the stadium, and it was amazing because even though Everton lost on that day, it was one of the best moments in my life. Being there, being among the people, seeing something, being somewhere where I've always seen on TV, and I'm like, man, I have to get to Goodison Park one day. And being there on that day was so special to me. And I got a taste of what you guys have been feeling for all your lives. And man, one more thing before I head off. I know I'm not going to be here for very long because you have other callers.
No, go on.
But before I head off, I just want to say to you, Pet, and to Baz as well, thank you, man. You guys have been amazing. You're the reason why I'm like, the content that these guys put out, they deserve to be awarded for it. And that's why I became a patron. I'm like, I have to contribute in some sort of way towards the content that these guys put out on a week-to-week basis. So that's why I became a patron, and it's thank you. That's all I have to say, man. Thank you for the day-to-day, just bringing out content. And even though Everton are terrible, I'm able to go somewhere where I could listen to somebody being hurt just like I heard. You know what I mean?
It's very kind. It's very kind of you.
I'm able to do that, so
it's very, very kind of you. Nice
that's
to
what
hear.
It's been, man. Thank you, guys.
No problem
man.
at all, Everton. It's great to hear from
man.
you. Let me just ask you one question before you go. Are you an Everton fan because your name is Everton?
Initially, I was kind of, because I'm from a family where we have quite a few supporters of football teams, and as I said, Chelsea is a team my brother supports, and he's like, Chelsea is the best thing ever. And I'm like, I'm gonna support a team. I'm gonna support a team as well. I watch the Premier League, and I'm looking at. I heard about Everton before that. I've heard about Everton almost my entire life, me being named Everton. But I was never like, which team am I going to support? Am I going to support Everton? And then I started watching Everton towards the end of David Moyes' era, and I'm like, this is a team for me. This is a team for me. Even though they're not doing superbly well, they're fighting. They're fighting at the top end of the table, and it's kind of a downer for the last couple of seasons because we've been terrible. But I was able to watch them and see them fight, and with not much money being able to fight with the top half of the table, and that was inspiring for me, and that's why I became an Everton supporter, and that's why on a day-to-day basis I Google Everton and what's up, what's the news with Everton, what's going on a day-to-day. I swear. For the last decade, it's been like that with my life, man.
Well, let me ask you what.
I don't know.
Let me just ask you one more question, then, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Have you got do you know other people who are called Everton? Because the name Everton seems to be quite popular in like the Caribbean community. I might be because I need to find out what this link is, because we've got people in this country who are from the Caribbean community who are called Everton. There's a few, and obviously there was the cricketer, wasn't it, Clive Everton, and there's a few, and I don't
Everton
Weeks. And I don't know which way it comes from, whether it was brought here from the Caribbean community or somehow it came from us. Because obviously it can go either way. So have you got any idea why there are so many people called Everton?
I think it's like there's a massive influence English influence in the Caribbean, especially because remember, Saint Lucia gained independence from England. Yeah, so there's this like massive English influence across the entire Caribbean. As someone pointed out, Everton Weeks being a cricketer from Barbados. My dad's name, I kid you not, is Everton Weeks. Wow. My dad's name is Everton Weeks. And I have my mom's last name, which is Hippolyte, but my dad's name is Everton Weeks. And there's also a famous reggae artist by the name of Everton Blender.
Yeah.
There's loads of... there's loads of people from the Caribbean with that first name.
Isn't the rumour that Bob Marley's dad was an Evertonian as well? Have you ever heard that rumour? Honestly, I've heard that rumour. I've heard that rumour that Bob Marley's dad was an Evertonian. Because Bob Marley obviously was massive into his football, obviously. And there was a rumour that Bob Marley's dad was an Evertonian. So I'm just throwing it out there. But it would be amazing, really interesting to find out where that link come from. Maybe that's something that Everton could do. But listen, Everton, fantastic to have you on the call, mate. Make sure you call back another time. Instead of just praising me and Baz for being the amazing broadcasters we are, just give us, to me, you're not a true Evertonian till you start ripping the team to bits. So next time you call, make sure you give us make sure you have a go at someone. No, only messing. Everton, superb, mate. Thank you for calling us.
Indeed.
Cheers, mate. Thanks, mate. See you now. Bye now.
Brilliant, Everton. Have a good day.
There you go. There you go. His name was Everton, Baz. His dad's name was Everton.
So why was he a blue?
His name was Everton. There you go. Why wouldn't you be? Let's have... What? No, but there's one called Knobhead. Two-headed boy says, lack of communication is one of the most frustrating things for me with the club at the minute. Lack of understanding of the importance of sharing the vision with Everton and being honest about the problems increases the gap between the club and fans. We can all see the issues, so they need to quit the Orwellian doublespeak and just talk about the problems and tell us what they're going to do about it. And I suspect they don't do the latter because there isn't a plan anyway. Hoping the new director of football alongside Frank Lampard can do something about it. Just going off the back of that, these accounts were put together last year. I know they had up to the 31st to publish them.
Yeah.
But why leave it that late? What is the thinking behind leaving it that late?
Well, the accounts generally over recent time, they've actually been out not far shorter than this, but when I say out, up on Company's House, so people go on Company's House website and see when they're finally published, where anyone can see them. March hasn't been in the past unusual, right? However, they've always been made available to shareholders and then indirectly the wider fan base because they stick them up on a website well in advance of when the general meeting would take place, where a couple of weeks before would be really quite late. Yeah, so that typically would mean that the accounts would be out towards the end of the year before. Yeah, so in this case, we'd have expected them, say, I don't know, October, November, December last year. So the Shareholders Association were meeting with the club as late as the beginning of December, and the reason they were giving then for two things. One was why they hadn't announced when the general meeting was going to be, and the accounts themselves, because they were being topped and tailed, yeah, and they anticipated some good news, and they didn't want to fall into that trap of you publish everything and then the good news happens and people say, well, why didn't you tell us before, and so on.
Yeah.
And I think during that process, they just impulsively, should we say, or quickly, yeah, decide not to have general meetings anymore, and therefore as soon as they don't have to have general meetings, there's no deadline for publishing the accounts. I mean, the last live general meeting we had before the pandemic, they were handing the accounts out
on
the night.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So they've had over the last 2 or 3 years wobbles around this very simple process of getting accounts agreed, getting them signed off by auditors, and so on. So long answer, but I've no idea, mate, why.
It's bizarre, though, isn't it? It is that thing again.
It's disrespectful in many respects.
Well, it's disrespectful to someone like you, who's shareholder. The rest of us, it's sort of not here or there, but I do think it is disrespectful for fans in general, just because a lot of fans are now waking up to the fact that the club are just really bad.
at communicating with us.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I would say is, if you've had such a long time from when these accounts were probably audited, notwithstanding you might be in negotiations with the Premier League and all sorts of things, but if you have had them ready in broad brush terms for so long, which must be 5 or 6 months, you'd think you'd pitch them up and present them better.
Yeah.
You know, and I found out the accounts were going to get published last night when I started getting journalists contacting me to ask questions about them. Yeah. And I said, I haven't seen them. Well, how can I ask questions about something I've not seen? Oh, well, they're getting published at 5 o'clock. Are they really? You know, and then I got an email at 10 to 5 from the club saying, here's the accounts.
Well, isn't that another thing Everton needs to get better at? Is they know you're going to get a phone call. Yeah. They know I might get a phone call sometimes. I do. Maybe you're not on accounts, but other things I get phone calls all the time.
Toffee TV will get a call about stadiums and whatever.
So why that's another thing. In the past, listen, don't get me wrong, the club do let us in on certain things. They send us, 5 minutes before something comes out, we will get the press release.
5 minutes, man.
But but generally is 5 minutes. But they must surely, and we've had this in the past. We've had when the stadium stuff was happening, we were getting contacted and spoke to and briefed so that because they knew that we'd get asked the questions on shows like this.
Sure.
You get the phone call off Radio Merseyside, Sky Sports, whoever. So why on earth aren't they coming to someone like you and saying, well, here's all the information, digest it, because we know tonight someone's going to give you a phone call, and we want you, John Blaine, head of the Shareholders Association, to know as much about what's going on so that you can communicate that stuff as well. Because that statement yesterday was very, very confusing if you are not someone who fully understands it. But I don't think even someone who fully understands it would have looked at it and gone, well, this doesn't look confusing. It was, to me, it wasn't
put together particularly well.
No.
Yeah. And journalists were briefed yesterday about the details, and I was talking to Baz earlier on, sports journalists getting this stuff briefed to them, and shareholders are completely and utterly in the dark about today's the day. And that's just crazy. I mean, it's shooting yourself in the foot. Why wouldn't you? And the only conclusion you can draw is that they are uncomfortable with what reaction they may or may not get. Someone like Paul, the ESC, who does, if he hasn't already done it, he'll do an analysis of all these things. He would get them, like you said, you get press releases, but not 5 minutes before, at least, maybe the day before or some hours, because he's going to comment.
Yeah, of course he is.
You know what I mean? So if you're not telling him what the accounts look like because you're fearful of what his views may be, you're going to get them in a day or two's time anyway. One of the things that came out the briefing yesterday, which is circulating this afternoon, is that the stadium has slipped.
Well, I was going to ask you about this.
So I've asked the club, and they say it's news to us.
Yeah. So that's the other thing. I mean, I was going to finish with actually.
Sorry, that's why I was on my phone.
Yeah, you said that. Somebody said today, or Paul, the ESC has said, or something has said that the stadium is running late.
Yeah. But I think Paul Joyce has said it might not be ready for the start of the season that is supposed to be ready.
I mean, the club. Well, I mean, even Paul, the ESC, was saying only a couple of weeks ago, or 3-4 weeks ago, the stadium's bang on time, and there's no problems at all. And this week we got the stadium update. The fourth corner of the stadium was getting walls fine on it, which means that the four obviously, like the four pillars of the ground are nearly done.
Yeah.
Therefore, the metalwork will go up soon.
The steel work, the if you like, even though it's not necessarily going to be a formulaic bowl type stadium, the steelwork will look like that, and that'll be up before the end of the year.
Yeah.
Colin Chong told me that to my face, less than a month ago.
But in terms of the stadium,
so you can't go 9 months late, as these stories seem to suggest.
I can't see how in a month. I was going to say I can't see how something can be 9 months late.
So it's obviously a misspeaking. It's a misspeaking by somebody, isn't it? Or a lack of testing and understanding skills are not being used. Because if you look at what Paul Joyce has said, all he's said, is it may not be ready for the.
Well, let me ask you the question though, and I don't know whether I'm speaking out of turn here, but do you think that's someone at the club's job responsibility to literally get in touch with, see that on and go,
yeah,
that's not right. Because I had a message yesterday off someone who doesn't work at the football club,
of course it is,
telling me that something we put out on our Twitter account wasn't factually correct. It was from the source, actually. It was from the source of where we got it from.
Sure.
And they got in touch and said, listen, that's not right. So we took it down, and that was it. Yeah. So do you think that Everton should work harder at looking past those journalists and looking at people? Because people now, listen, the Esk put stuff out all the time. People know that he's a business...
reputable
source on business and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So people will look to him. If he's put something out today that says the stadium is running late now, isn't it up to Everton?
No, Paul hasn't.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, you've got two Pauls.
Come on then.
The Esk has said, that's curious, sort of.
Okay.
The tweet's there somewhere, I can't remember the exact words. Because quite recently they were saying it was going to be ready a lot sooner.
Okay.
So he's just making the mind the gap type of thing.
Fair point.
You know, a month ago, shareholders were told everything's bang on schedule. Yesterday, apparently, allegedly, journalists are saying maybe not.
Okay.
You know, now being on schedule isn't the same as saying it'll be ready on the 14th of August or whatever. It just means it's on schedule. Okay. If your target is December, you're on schedule. You know what I mean? So who knows? But yes, absolutely, it's somebody's job. Someone in the PR team, right, to say, right, what Mr. Joyce has said is a bit ambiguous, so we'll ask him to tighten that up, or it's absolutely spot on, and therefore other people have misunderstood what we, and so on and so forth. But yeah, of course it is. Yeah. But of course, our relationship with journalists as a football club isn't as effective as it should be, and I do know for a fact, because they bend my ear about it sometimes, is often they've got copy, they've got deadlines, and they're waiting for clarification or comment from the club, and the deadline they have from their boss comes and goes, so they publish.
Got to put it out,
and you get that phrase, don't you? Publish and be damned, sort of thing.
I do think. I know. Listen, just to give Everton some credit, I know a couple of weeks ago, something was said regarding the ownership of Everton by Manchester United.
The manager,
Ralph Rangnick, and Everton did get in touch and made sure that it was clarified. I don't think Man United ever came out and clarified it. So they do that thing. But I do think that for things like that, they should be aware that if it's somebody like that, they have a responsibility. Now, in this day and age, on a platform like Twitter, I do think they've got a responsibility to clarify that.
Particularly when the guys who are talking about it on Twitter are, you know, quoting something that's in the Times, and which is quite a reputable newspaper, you know, and Paul Joyce is a reputable journalist. So it needs, you know, if people are going to worry about it, it needs some comment.
But apart from that, the stadium seems to be fine.
Yeah, as far as I understood it, it's bang on schedule.
Yeah, and financially, Everton are still talking to two financial institutions.
You see, that's not what the clubs say when you ask them, right? Okay. The clubs say they have options, right, which is fair enough. Okay. The club have also said many times in the past, and I don't know whether people choose to forget this or not, but this is fact as I know it, is that they're going to fund the stadium on a phase by phase basis, which I'm cool with this, right? Yeah. I take that to mean they'll tell us the funding just before the phase is going to start. Yeah. Why would, you know, why feel the need to tell you things, you know, ahead of time? And this, so the bit that's in this annual report is about site preparation and stuff like that. So people can see site prep costs whatever, 75, 80 million quid. They could have stopped it if they'd wanted to, blah, blah, blah. The next phase is what we're doing now.
We're in phase 2 now, aren't we?
And that will culminate in the steelwork being up. Well, if that's not due to be done until the end of the year, which my understanding is it'll start in the summer and be finished by the end of the year, then sometime between now and then, they'll fund the next phase, won't they? Yeah. Now, if the next phase is funded by the largest shareholder or the owner, fine, because that's a bit better for us than borrowing money.
Let me just ask you before we finish then. This might sound stupid, but
not from you.
What does Mashiri have to gain by putting money into the stadium? Let me just finish this, because that did sound stupid. when what I mean by that is he took the debt, 100 million debt, and he converted it into shares. So he converted it into obviously owning more of the football club. Is there anything left he can do in terms of that? Can he own part of the stadium independently from owning the club? If he put money into it, or would it just be literally self-funding his own stadium? Does that make sense?
Well, he owns 94% of the football club.
Yeah.
Right? And therefore, when he and he achieved that by converting debt into equity, right? Money probably was never going to get back, so might as well have it in equity, sort of thing. And then any valuation on the football club that goes up, in theory, gives him a paper profit, doesn't it? I don't know what the club's perceived to be valued at right now. The bit about shared ownership or not, and all that sort of stuff. Right now, the people with planning permission to build the thing is Everton Football Club, and the asset will be owned by Everton Football Club. Yeah. Now, one of the things that exists out there is obviously a stadium development company, and stuff like that. And actually, one of the things I said a long time ago was have the stadium owned by a separate company, not the football club, which might be a shareholder in it, right? Because and the way Matt and I did a blog on this. I've done 2 blogs in my life, and that was one of them. So it's out there somewhere, and I'll pull it out if they ever do it and say, look, I said this years ago. But you could have the stadium itself, then you could sell shares in the stadium company, which owns the stadium. And the club could own 51% of it, and the stadium could sell all the other stuff. That would allow fans, of course, who might not be able to own shares in the football club to own shares in the stadium. So long-winded, but all things are possible, my friend. All things are possible.
The only reason I asked that is because if obviously we get the funding, then the stadium will get built, and that will help obviously his valuation of when he sells the club. But if he puts his own money into it, he's never going to get that money back, truly, is he? Because he'll still get that valuation. Whereas I thought maybe if he could turn that into shares or something, he'll always own something separate from it.
He could.
Yeah.
He could. You could do it that way. The football club could choose to create a business, a company that will own the stadium. And I'm not sure legally how they can transfer it, but with the view that if where there's a will, there's a way. Let's just take that for now. And they could say, well, we keep control of it, 51%, but they could sell 49%, right? Now, he may say, well, I'll buy that 49%, but in buying that 40%, he'd have to, he'd still have to spend money, wouldn't he?
Well, the other side of it would be, obviously, he could put the money in for the next part of the stadium, knowing that, hopefully...
In return for doing that, I'm going to get,
Well, I was going to say, well, hopefully, because at the moment, the interest rates are obviously through the roof, borrowing rates and such, everything else going on in the world, this is not the greatest time to borrow. He might take that money, put it in himself, knowing that he'll get it back anyway, down the road.
Quite possibly. Quite possibly.
There you go. We've gone past the hour and a half. Big thank you for everyone calling in. Big thank you for you watching. Big thanks for everyone getting involved in the comments. Big thanks to John for his knowledge, although I'm not sure about his potty mouth. And we'll be back tomorrow on Patreon. I'm back next Wednesday, maybe for an hour, maybe ahead of the Burnley game. We'll see you later. Bye.
Cheers, guys.